AEW this Saturday night, WrestleDream, their second WrestleDream pay-per-view. It's one of the newcomer pay-per-views as AEW moves to have these kind of monthly pay-per-view formats, as we're just coming off the one in September, and obviously All In, All Out, and we're moving towards Full Gear. But we have WrestleDream here sandwiched in between. It is from the Tacoma Dome in Tacoma, Washington. They're expecting around 3, 4, 5,000, I'm thinking. Last I saw, it was in that number, somewhere between 3 and 5,000. The place can hold probably like 20,000 people or close to it. I think their capacity at 21,000 is the capacity of the Tacoma Dome. It's kind of a weird setup because it's a dome that's more like an arena, so it's not like a stadium event.
So how many are they expecting? How many people?
3 to 5,000.
That's
yeah. But the good news is, and listen, here's how you got to look at it, and this is how I look at it, who I am right now, and obviously what we have with WWE being as red hot as they are with ticket sales and just falling hand over fist of money. AEW right here, because again, Tony Khan's not scaling back. He's not saying we got 3 to 5,000 people, so let's give you some crap show or let's make this as bad as possible. He's putting on a show that, to be 100% honest with you, I don't see this show being any different in any way if it was 21,000. So good on that. So essentially what I mean by that is, for me and you and the wrestling fans out there, if you're in the area or you want to be in the area, $25 gets you in the door. And when I say gets you in the door, it gets you a decent seat because, like I said, they're only having so many seats for sale. So $25 gets you a good seat for a pay-per-view event in which the competitors at the event are going to put on a show as if they chose to go to AEW, if they want to be in AEW, because that's why they're there, right? Bryan Danielson isn't going to be there and saying, well, I'm going to, only put on a show for 3,000 people. I don't think so. This is essentially his retirement match. So, good on fans. I was lucky. I got to pay a little amount of money while it was a much bigger crowd. But the point is, I got to go see Sting's final match. It was a great pay-per-view. No one there was not putting on a show as if they were in front of a WrestleMania caliber crowd. I didn't have to pay $500 to see it. And I got a good show. And again, the more AEWs exist, the more they stay a little bit on the heels of the WWE to keep them in check to an extent. Obviously, not so much to all the naysayers out there because you're only getting 3 to 5,000. Yeah. But obviously, the main complaint on this card in general is just the same complaint as we always have, and that is such the juxtaposition going from WWE's 5-match pay-per-view card to this 10-match main card, 11 if you count the pre-show.
It's double.
More than double, right? If you count the pre-show here. And it's just, again, it would be a little bit better if AEW was putting on the WWE style of card that they were doing when they did, 8-match cards. Because even back, let's be fair, WWE even back, 5-6 years ago, was still maxing out for not WrestleMania cards at 7-8 matches. That was kind of the go-to, 7 to 8 matches, right? WrestleMania is a little bit different, but that was their one extenuating circumstance. But AEW is putting on not just these large amount of matches, like these WrestleMania amount of matches, but then they're giving them all WrestleMania plus amount of time. Yeah. That's the thing here. This is an 11-match card that's reminds you of a WWF pay-per-view from the 80s where it was 10 matches, but they got it done in 2.5 hours. They're going to give everybody here a lot of time. And specifically the main event, right? We'll kind of start there and break it down to what matters below that. And that's Bryan Danielson in his home state of Washington taking on Jon Moxley in what could very well be his last match. And what we have been talking about for months leading up to this, right? Months leading up to him winning the Owen Hart Invitational Tournament, to him becoming the champion at All In, right? To him defending the title along the way because we knew this was it. So my question to you, in this crowd, in this build-up to this place, Washington State, the home of Swerve Strickland, the home of Bryan Danielson, the home of Darby Allin, is this it for Bryan Danielson, or is he going to kick the tires on this retirement and move it along to somewhere, I guess, unpredictable? Because after this, I would not know where it would end. This seems to be the place. Is he going to pull the trigger in Washington?
Yeah, I think he does. I think this is the end of the full time in ring career of the legend Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan in WWE. I think Moxley's going to win the match. I think it's going to be a very gritty, tough, typical John Moxley. There's going to be blood. It's going to get nasty. You know how it is with John Moxley. It's one of my complaints, but I think in this kind of setting, I think Bryan Danielson wants to go out, in a really, good match, like a, kind of almost like a, just a very physical match as well. So I'm looking forward to it. And I do think you're going to see a lot of false finishes as we do, but I think Moxley's going to pull it out. What do you think?
As we get closer, it's one of those things that it is, I guess, stranger. I would have said 6 months ago or 4 months ago or 2 months ago, absolutely 100%. This is the day. This is it. And now that we're here, it feels a little off, I guess is the best way to put it. Maybe it is that 2,000 to 3,000 fans they're going to get, right? Maybe it not being on the stadium stage, maybe it being against John Moxley, not to any discount to him, but it isn't Sting, and I know it's not going to be Sting, but it just isn't that, John Moxley, I guess this feud has been going on just a little bit, and this feud actually is kind of tainted a little bit from our fan perspective of how it kind of got started with some of those, I guess, callbacks to older wrestling that are, a little off-putting nowadays with the paper bag and the syringe needle and all this other, I know he wasn't necessarily a part of that, but, some of the other things that they were a part of. I think actually if I'm not mistaken, on Private Party, didn't they do a needle thing themselves?
I feel like they did. I feel like they did.
So with this kind of John Moxley return, and being a different character and that kind of thing, you just are like, are they putting the belt on him? Are we moving to John Moxley getting the belt now with this guy? And I guess my question too, and kind of in the rumor mill, right, with this John Moxley character, is Shane McMahon a part of this, and is he going to be showing up at WrestleDream?
I mean, I feel like every time I talk about a surprise, it goes the other way. Whether I say something's happening, it doesn't. I say something's not happening, it does.
Well, we were double right at Bad Blood, right? Because we were saying, is it Jimmy? Is it The Rock? Ended up being both.
Yeah, we did get that right. That touche. That's yes,
fair. It was everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the whole crew.
They didn't wait out. They didn't give us Jimmy and then Rock next month or vice versa.
I guess if it's gonna happen, I think Shane McMahon would come out to this pay-per-view. What do you think? I think he finally does.
Yeah, yeah, but I guess the issue I have with any of this is the fact that I want Bryan Danielson to go out in a clean way. To be honest with you, I think his best last match would be like him and Will Ospreay, and a clean finish, an exciting finish, one where fans are cheering for both, where maybe it's like good guy versus good guy. The whole Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair, right? Shawn Michaels getting the standing ovation. He's not the heel. John Moxley is like the ultra heel right now. Yeah, so, is Bryan Danielson going to go out and he's going to be on his back while people are booing John Moxley? Is John Moxley going to have to show some humility in retiring Bryan Danielson? Like, again, I know that Bryan Danielson's a little more unconventional, so this might be how he wants it. He might be like, no, I don't want that sentimental swan song that, other people have. I want to go out wrestling term-wise. I want to go out, kicked and beaten, and I don't want that whole shaking my hand and thing, where everyone's crying in my way out the door. So maybe that's how Bryan Danielson wants this. But just as a fan, it doesn't feel like it felt for Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels, I guess, that sense.
But you know what? It's Bryan Danielson. That's like you mentioned, you just said it. You said unconventional. He is a very unorthodox kind of guy, and and I think if he wants to go out this way, good for him.
One way that they're moving on to another match, saving Will Ospreay versus Ricochet from another one-on-one encounter, as we saw on AEW Dynamite's 5th anniversary 2 weeks ago, was the fact that in that match, which originally ended where they had to restart it. But then Takashita got involved, and now it's a three-way for the AEW International Championship at the pay-per-view. How this match came about? Do you like the way that this match came about?
Yeah, I love it. I think they did a great job the way they did it, because obviously Ospreay and Ricochet had that really good match, and they went to a draw. They start the match right back up, and then Konosuke Takeshita he intervened, and there was no it was one of those matches that was unfinished, and it's the perfect way to add a third party, and in this case a triple threat match for the championship. And honestly, I feel like they're booking Takeshita to be the champion. I just feel like that's where they're going. I just I know everybody thinks Will Ospreay's gonna have this title for a long time. I think he's on to bigger things after this, and I think what happens is, and the best way for this title change to happen is Takeshita pins Ricochet in this match, where Takeshita wins, but Ospreay doesn't get pinned or submitted or anything like that. And then maybe they do something later on, but I think it sets up Takeshita to win, and I think Ospreay is going to move up the ladder to bigger, better things, which we all know he's very capable of doing.
Darby Allin with a match in his home state against Brody King. I guess Darby Allin, right, being in the what do you call it? The Tacoma, Seattle area, they call it the SeaTac, as it's on the airport tag or whatever. Do we care about this? Is this just Darby Allin in his home getting a match on a pay-per-view?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this match. I think obviously just the way you presented that, I mean, it makes too much sense. Darby's going to get the win.
Moving on to another championship match. The Young Bucks taking on Private Party. The Young Bucks have been the tag team champions for quite a little bit now in AEW.
Yeah.
They're kind of the top of the game here, I guess you would say. What are the bosses? The EVPs as they keep coming out as. Do we move on to the Private Party becoming the champions, or is this just kind of a formality? The Young Bucks keeping along, waiting for FTR to get healthier. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they're not healthy, but
No, yeah, I think the Bucks are going to retain. I do think it's going to be a good match. I think Private Party is going to have a good showing. I feel like they're a really talented tag team. I think Zay and Quen, I think they're very talented competitors, and I think the sky's the limit for both of those guys going forward. But I think for right now, I do think the Young Bucks are going to hang on to those straps, and then, like you mentioned, I think they're going to go. I think they'll eventually drop it to an FTR level tag team at some point down the line.
Mariah May at All In, she became the women's champion. She's facing Willow Nightingale for the AEW Women's World Championship. Do you think they're crowning Willow Nightingale at this pay-per-view, or is Mariah May going to be defensive?
Well, I think I know what your answer is going to be, because I think you and I are kind of in the same page with this one. I got to tell you, from what I've seen from Mariah May, and I'll be honest, I haven't seen all of her work, but from what I have seen, I think I think they did a good job putting the belt on her. And I just, Willow Nightingale, I know a lot of the internet wrestling community is like, she's a darling, for them. I think she's too generic for me. Like, to me, she's almost like I've always said it, she's like a discount version of like when Bayley was a hugger kind of a thing. And like, I know she has a little bit of that dark side. So, in some ways she has that sort of, that toughness in a way like a Nia Jax does, but I think she's a better wrestler than Nia Jax. But Willow Nightingale, to me, like, when you're trying to tell a story, like, when the commentator's trying to tell a story, like, what do you say about her? I just, I don't buy it. And here's the thing. I don't think it's something that she's never going to get, because she will be a future world champion, whether it's this weekend or not is a whole different thing. But just remember, for a long time, Liv Morgan, the fans wanted her for so long in WWE to be a champion. But like, even Corey Graves is like, well, how do we present you? How do we tell a story? How do we get people to invest in you? And I think that's kind of where she is right now. And I think, I think Mariah May is just, she's on a roll, and I think she keeps rolling.
I think the other match of interest, obviously wondering what Swerve Strickland does. He's scheduled to return at this event, so they're going to give him some time. But Hangman Adam Page and Jay White, obviously Jay White is one of those people, one of the biggest names in professional wrestling a couple of years ago. He was right up there with Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay and the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes and all those kind of massive free agents. He's had a few glimmers of hope in AEW, but for the most part, he's kind of meddled around the mid card. Not saying he's not a good talent, he still is, but he's taking on Hangman Adam Page. I think this is going to be a really good match. I'm not 100% sold on the story of why, right? Because I think this is similar to like a Will Ospreay versus Ricochet, and it would be a big match. I guess Jay White in a one-on-one match against a lot of people deserves like more of main event kind of status. But that's really the last match on this card of big interest to me. I think Mark Briscoe versus Chris Jericho for the ROH Championship would be great to main event a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. And it'd probably give some notoriety to a Ring of Honor pay-per-view with Chris Jericho on the card. So save that for a main event of a Ring of Honor show instead of at this pay-per-view, which is already very full. Yeah. Jack Perry defending the AEW TNT Championship is something that's not really needed on this card, and probably the matches that mostly are needed on this card. While everyone loves the Acclaim, and they could be on in the pre-show, but Mansoor and Mason Madden, formerly known as Massey and stuff in WWE, so the M&M connection, they are taking on the Acclaimed, and yeah, that's going to be entertaining to an extent. I just don't feel that it has pay-per-view necessity.
It's not a pay-per-view worthy match, in my opinion.
And Hologram's been tearing it up on Collision, since he made his debut. So, maybe make this 2 out of 3 falls match against Mortis. I don't know, main event a Collision sometime. Again,
but I get it though. I mean, you're I don't think everybody has seen a lot of Hologram, to be honest with you. So I think this is a good way to present him to maybe a wider audience, because the AEW pay-per-views do get a decent amount of buys, and I feel like you're gonna expose him to more of an audience. I think so. I think this is good. I do think Hologram beats the Beast Mortos.
Yeah, and I think. It kind of reminds me. I don't know if you remember this so well, but WWE in like 1997, they were doing like that crossover with like AAA and CMLL when they're bringing over a lot of like luchadors. So like the Royal Rumble 1997 in San Antonio, that Royal Rumble had like a ton of big stars in Mexico in it as kind of like a cross promotion with WWF at the time. And this is like an all AAA kind of match, right? Because Hologram, he's famous as a luchador from Mexico. The Beast Mortis, he's famous as a luchador from Mexico. So, I mean, you're getting like an all Mexican luchador match on your pay-per-view. And it should be entertaining, right? It's kind of like a different genre. It's kind of like what the cruiserweights were, the light heavyweights were in WWF back in the day, right? You got your women's wrestling, you got your heavyweight wrestling, and then you have something in between. But with AEW, they've got a little bit of, with Will Ospreay and Ricochet now essentially giving you that kind of caliber that you used to get back in the day with WCW cruiserweights, right? With the high fly and the flips, those kind of matches. It's not necessarily needed to see luchadors in AEW because you're going to get that with like the Will Ospreays of the world. And yeah, I guess I could see even this match because, here's the thing too. I actually like a pay-per-view card that doesn't have to be super top heavy. So with WWE having the 5-match card, I like them. And I like even though the fact that some of those matches aren't even huge, right? Like we're seeing with Monday Night Raw and SmackDown nowadays having some of the bigger matches. Nia Jax versus Bayley for the championship at Bad Blood probably wasn't as big as that last Monster Standing match was, or probably wasn't as big on the card as that triple threat tag team ladder match was on SmackDown, or as big on the card as Gunther or Sami Zayn for the World Heavyweight Championship. But we don't want it to be, even in a 5-match card, I want something in there as kind of, I don't want to say intermission or comic relief or bathroom break, but something to kind of slow things down. So to be fair, yeah, I would probably rather have Hologram and Beast Mortis on this card than Mark Briscoe and Chris Jericho, or even, like I said, Hangman Page and Jay White. Like, because those guys are such a big match. Frankly, I like AEW Grand Slam and AEW Dynamite 5th Anniversary because they were kind of giving us those in a TV format. Those last 2 TV shows with AEW felt like a pay-per-view, but they were 2 hours long. They had
Yeah.
a big match at the top of the card, a big match at the end of the card, and then kind of the regular Dynamite stuff in between. Very easy to digest, right? So to be
100%.
fair,
Yeah.
I might have, obviously excluding Bryan Danielson's swan song here and quote unquote retirement match. If this Bryan Danielson John Moxley match wasn't on this card, I might prefer to have gone to one of those Grand Slams or AEW Dynamite versus this pay-per-view, because it gave us like a big match, but then didn't like just give us match. It gave us like Ricochet and Will Ospreay. That's the main event. That's what we're here for, and then kind of some other stuff underneath it to make the whole show digestible. That's what I would like to see here. I would like to see this be a 6-match card, and Hologram and Beast Mortis to be as part of that 6-match card, where it's like a big match at the top of the show, right? This triple threat with Will Ospreay and Ricochet, for AEW International Championship. And then, the Hologram and Beast Mortis in between, leading up again to the big main event. I would prefer that. I wish Tony Khan, of all the things he's doing, because he can't really make the crowds come, essentially, right? That's not necessarily something he can do per se, right? I don't think he's doing a bad job. He's doing what he believes is going to bring in crowds, and I would say, just personally, hey, hey, you're not even bringing in 10,000 people, so it's not like you owe the fans who are there this. It's not like the fans are owed 11 match 5
cut it down to 7 matches. Cut it down to 7. I think that's a good number. And I think, because like you mentioned, there's 3 or 4 matches alone that you could put on even like a Dynamite or something, and just or a Ring of Honor pay-per-view or something. You can move some stuff around. You don't need to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. That's kind of the issue with these pay-per-views.
I mean, and listen, here's the thing, and this is what I'm talking about. So WWE had a 5-match card at Bad Blood in Atlanta, but just because they had a 5-match card didn't mean that everything was exhausting. Yes, you had CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. You gave them 31 minutes, and it was awesome because that was one of the best matches of the year, and it was a feud that's been going. And yes, the main event was 25 minutes because it's the main event match, right? But the stuff in between, while it wasn't short, it wasn't what we've seen before with WWE throwing comic relief in there for 4 minutes, like a women's match that lasts 2.5 minutes. But it also wasn't 30 minutes either. It was 14 minutes for Nia Jax. It was 12 minutes for the Damian Priest match, and it was 14 minutes for Rhea Ripley. The problem with, like I said, with AEW giving us these matches, this is their last pay-per-view, right? This is the pay-per-view in Chicago. Your main event was 31 minutes. That's fine, right? But the problem with your main event being 31 minutes is the match before between Bryan Danielson and Jack Perry, which again was a match where we knew Bryan Danielson was going to win to just bring us to Washington, right? Yeah. It wasn't this big, huge pay-per-view match that we were needing. It was just kind of a stepping stone to get to now. They gave that 27 minutes. They gave that more time than Bad Blood's main event, right? So that wasn't necessarily needed. Mercedes Moné's match was 16 minutes. The Okada match was 15 minutes. Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale, right, in the Chicago street fight with no championship on the line, they gave that as much time as they gave both women's matches back at Bad Blood. Will Ospreay, of course, they gave him 20 minutes on the card. The Young Bucks got 15 minutes. And after all said and done, MJF and Daniel Garcia got 23 minutes, right? So listen, if you want to have an 11-match card, then the show's got to be shorter. Then the matches themselves got to be way shorter. And if you're not wanting to do that, and I don't want you to do that, then give us 5 or 6 matches. Because here's the thing. Under the current format, AEW giving us 5 matches would still be a longer pay-per-view than WWE because, again, the matches are just longer. Yeah, right? Might probably even out. Minutes. Yeah, so exactly. So, if AEW said this pay-per-view was 5 matches, I would still go in there being like, this is going to be a 4-hour show.
Because every match is 25, 30 minutes. So you're I don't mind the length of matches like that, but why does every single match have to be that length? It doesn't make sense.
AEW is great because they're giving you these really long matches. While WWE is extending some of their match times, for the most part, AEW is the company that you go to get these quote-unquote 5-star classics, right? That's, as Michael Cole said, the Hell in a Cell match will not be one of those 5-star classics. That's great, though. That's fine. AEW is there to provide them. The
Yeah.
problem with that is, though, if you provide a 5-star classic with a 5-star classic, it wears you just out as a fan.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to watch Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson go for 45 minutes and then be like, oh, that's only match 3 on this card. Right? It takes away the effect of that. Right? The reason we remember Undertaker and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25 is because after Shawn Michaels and Undertaker were done at WrestleMania 25, freaking, Daniel Bryan and Sheamus didn't go out there for 45 minutes themselves.
Yeah.
Right? With 25 near falls. Right? That's why we remember it. So for us to remember Hangman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland a little bit better going 30 minutes, you don't have Bryan Danielson going out there in a match where we know he's going to win the championship because we're leading to WrestleDream, right? You still gave him 27 minutes. That's just kind of ridiculous. Either way, I'm very curious to see, just for the fact that if this is Bryan Danielson's last match, I'll be tuning in specifically for that. You don't have to tune in early. Probably put the pay-per-view on around 11 o'clock Eastern time. I won't miss the main event.
Which works out good for me because the Syracuse will be playing at 8 o'clock that night, so I can I'll be able to catch the Bryan Danielson match after the game, so it works out good for me.
Gotcha. Football, so I'll be working because it's already hockey season, so I'll be doing hockey stuff. So I'll be probably still watching the pay-per-view as it goes on, as it's live. But yeah, I'll be, hockey game, post-game show, all the drive home, all of that, right? We've talked about the length of some wrestling shows and what you can do and how long these wrestling shows. I mean, I could probably, go watch a whole hockey game, come home from the hockey game, go out to the mall, catch a bite to eat, catch a movie, come back home, and the show's still going on, right?
Yeah.
I did that, right? I knew during the last pay-per-view when I went out to the movies to see Beetlejuice and it got over with at like 10:30, and I walked by the Dave and Buster's, which was supposed to be playing it in my town, and it wasn't on the TVs. I knew that it was a mistake and that the pay-per-view was clearly going, even though with WWE I'd be like, oh, maybe it's over. But I was like, no, this is AEW. It's only 10:30. The show started at 8. This pay-per-view is definitely not over. In fact,
100%.
I found out it was only like half over, right? In all honesty. So, either way, a big pay-per-view, something we'll definitely be talking about next week on the show, and I can't wait to do it.